2.2 fam, welcome back to another video. If you're new here, my name is Shannon and my husband and I share videos on our multicultural home and simple living. Today I was going to share with you our second born. This is Isaiah, his birth story. It's not a typical video I would probably share, but he had quite the entrance into the world, and so I thought it would be fun to document it and share it. So with my first pregnancy, I had a epidural for that labor, and our daughter came 1 week late, but she came naturally, and I had pain meds, and it was very typical natural unfolding labor. And I kind of expected the same thing this time around. I was planning on getting an epidural, and we did know that the baby was big and expected to be larger, so we did have an induction date scheduled ahead of my due date due to the baby's size. I was obviously desiring for the baby to come on their own, but we were also at peace with the scheduled induction. So Isaiah was born on a Friday early in the morning, and so I'll start with that Thursday. That Thursday afternoon, I had absolutely no signs of labor. I took our daughter Vera to the park for like an hour and a half. We played in the sand. That evening, we all went out as a family. My mother-in-law lives with us, and so she had recently come back from Cameroon, and so we decided to all go out and have some family time. We went down to a splash pad and got ice cream together as a family. Got home around 7:30, 8 p.m., put our daughter to bed. I did some things around the house, then I think I went to bed around 9:30 that night, 10. And I remember I fell asleep reading, and I woke up like around 11:45 and the light was on. And I went to the bathroom and noticed that I was probably losing my mucus plug. I was like, oh, okay. Figured that we'd probably have the baby the next day at some point, but I still at this point had no signs of active labor, no contractions, things like that. So that was around 11:45 p.m. Thursday night. I told my husband, and then I went back to bed. I struggled going back to sleep. I might have slept on and off for a little bit, and looking back, I obviously was probably in some discomfort. And so around, my husband came to bed midnight or a little after that, and around the time he was coming to bed, I just decided to get up. And I got up and recognized I was in more discomfort. I also noticed like some contractions starting and was having more like the back pain. And so that was around midnight, I would say, or a little after. So I decided that I would try to just do some things around the house. Quickly, that became evident that I wasn't going to be able to do that, and I was like, wow, these contractions are more consistent. At this point, I think I knew like to put my attention to packing the last minute stuff for the hospital. And so I was working towards that. I even said I would take a shower and get ready, so that way when we're ready to go, we could go. Around 1:05 a.m. is the first contraction I documented and recorded on my phone. And at that point, they were very consistent and regular. I was noticing that the pain was changing more from my back to my abdomen. Around like 1:52 a.m. is when we left for the hospital. And right before we left, the last few contractions I had at the house and like getting out to the car were very like quite intense, like pain-wise. And it just seemed like they had just changed like instantly. In the drive, I continued to have those very intense, painful contractions. I like squeezed my husband's hand, honestly was just screaming in pain during them. And on the drive is when I think it sunk in, like this baby is coming and this baby's coming soon. And so my husband drove safely but very quickly, and it just became intense, I would say. And the goal was to get to the hospital. It just changed very quickly. When we were 5 to 8 minutes out from the hospital, I felt like a bunch of pressure and felt like I needed to start pushing. And my water actually broke all over in the car. And I knew it. I knew what it was right away, obviously. And so I told my husband my water broke. And again, it was just get to the hospital. So we got to the hospital and we got there probably around like 2:20. And at this point, I felt like I needed to push the baby out. But we were just in the entranceway of the women's center entrance. And so my husband ran in and motioned to the security guard like the baby was coming. And they called for a wheelchair, and I think they called for doctors and nurses too, because once I got into the lobby, I walked into the lobby, I was there right away with the security guard and my husband, and I was telling them like I wanted to push the baby out. But pretty soon after that, there was a nurse down there, and then a midwife right away, and a couple other nurses, like within a minute. And that was really reassuring that there was medical staff there. And they tried to get me to sit in the wheelchair to go up to the delivery floor, but I just couldn't. It was uncomfortable. And so I kind of like straddled the wheelchair, and at this point they checked to see how dilated I was, and they didn't tell me this, but they just phrased it as, we don't feel the baby's head yet. But I was fully dilated, all of my water had broke, and was ready for the baby to come. They were very reassuring. The midwife was amazing. In the elevator, she just reassured me, like, we can have the baby in the elevator, it will be okay, like just reassuring me that they've done this before, and that like whenever the baby came, it would be okay. And they knew that the baby was coming. I remember them saying after the fact, like, if a woman says that she needs to push, like, you better listen to her. And I did. I felt like the baby was coming and I needed to push this baby out. And so we got up into the room, and obviously still having the intense contractions and pain. And at this point, I worked my way to the bed. I wasn't in the position that they wanted me to be in. They wanted me on my back, and I was just struggling because of the pain, and I was resisting. I was tensing up my body because of the pain and resisting, like, how maybe I should have been. At this point, I remember asking for an epidural, and I don't really remember their answer besides the fact that, like, I knew in my heart of hearts that it was too late, and that this baby was coming. And so we got up into the room around like 2:26 a.m. and a bunch of doctors and nurses were in there right away. The midwife could tell that that was like too many people, and so she asked just for who needed to be there to stay. And so it was the midwife and 2 other nurses. And they basically helped me do what I needed to do to relax. They reassured me that, like, you've made it to the hospital, you're safe now, like, you're gonna have this baby right now. And for me, that was probably the biggest mental battle, was knowing that this baby was coming. I knew it. I knew that I wasn't going to have pain meds or an epidural, but I had never anticipated my labor happening that way. So I had to get over, like, I kept having to get over the thought of, like, I can't do this, and I don't want it to happen this way, because it was going to happen that way. The baby was coming. We got into the room at 2:26, and you know, they worked with me and just reassured me and talked me through, like, to get my body to relax as much as possible in that amount of pain. And Isaiah was born at 2:41 a.m. So we were in the hospital for all of 15 minutes before he made his grand entrance. I think it was like around 3 pushes. I remember just being like, get this baby out of me. Which sounds terrible, but I just wanted him to come. Obviously, I was in pain, and it was a very chaotic, fear-induced labor. However, I'm so thankful for the midwife and the nurses, because in general, it went so smoothly. Yes, it was way different than anticipated, but it was a very smooth, issue-free labor. He was a big baby. He was 9 pounds, 10 ounces, but there was no complications, and I'm so thankful for that based on how it all unfolded. So that is my story of an unplanned, way unexpected, med-free, natural delivery of our second baby. Yes, it was very intense and painful, but it was short. I have been asked, like, how did the contractions feel? And the best way that I could describe, like, the most painful contractions, and I've heard them described this way, is kind of like a chainsaw going through your abdomen. To me, like, the back pain, when I had it, it was manageable because you could apply pressure to it and things like that. Once the pain moved to the abdomen, to me, I felt like there wasn't anything I could do to help relieve the pain besides squeeze my husband's hand to death and scream. And we are so grateful to God for his life and for a safe entrance and delivery into this world, especially with how the labor unfolded. I am forever grateful for the midwife who delivered him. It was a nurse midwife, and she truly was my stability in the chaotic environment. She was there in the lobby of the hospital and through the one who delivered him, and so I'm so thankful for her and how she physically helped me, but also emotionally was attuned to me to help me calm down, to allow my body to physically do what it needed to do. And we're so thankful to have him here. He's a big boy. He's 2 weeks old now, almost 2 weeks old. He's 11 pounds and just growing big, and we just feel immensely blessed and grateful. So I wanted to share that with you guys. Let me know in the comments below if any of you have had labors and deliveries that were way different than you could have anticipated. Let me know if there's any questions, but I feel like I covered the majority of the details that I felt like I could share and felt comfortable sharing. But thank you for joining and watching.